6s and 7s and so forth. So I'm going to go ahead and give some examples. So this first game is a very good example. It's Deumo Polacco against Vito Rallo. This is from the 1988 Italian Progressive Chess Championship. E4, E5, F6, Bishop B5, Knight C3, D4. This series should almost certainly lose. It ignores the material race. C6, D5, Bishop G4, Bishop takes D1, King takes D1, Knight F3, Knight takes E5, Knight takes C6, Knight takes D8. Check. This is a nice little checking maneuver here. King takes D8, Knight C6, Knight takes D4, Knight takes B5, Knight E7, Knight takes C3, check. At this point, Black has equalized material and delivered check, but we know that he's done more than equalized material. I mean, he's up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces to 3. But whenever you leave White with 2 rooks on the 7, it gives him some options. Because if he can just keep 1 rook on the 9, having 1 rook on the 8 for Black doesn't necessarily win, but having a rook on the 9 is generally extremely dangerous. And in this case, White found a very, very masterful series. B takes C3, Bishop D2. This is the key spare move here. E5, E takes F6, F takes G7. He chose to ignore the rook, which is the right move because he's thinking in terms of piece count and check defense, not in terms of eating the most valuable material, but eating the most. So it's also an example of the principle of quantity, which we talked about in the material section. And ends with check, Bishop takes E7, check. So we have an unusual position with 2 dark squared bishops on the board. Black's problem here is that White has basically set up his entire position to defend perfectly against the only type of piece that Black has left, which is a rook. So it doesn't really matter that Black has 2 rooks, because he can't checkmate with them. There's no way he can set up a position with, even if he could get, for example, rook on E2 and D2, that's not checkmate. And if he doesn't get the rook, he can't get the rook on D2 off because that delivers check. And as long as the rook on D2, the bishop on D2 remains on the board, any check on the back rank will be able to be blocked by the bishop on either side. A check here is blocked by bishop C1, a check here is blocked by bishop E1. And he can't get rid of both white rooks because as soon as he takes 1 white rook, that's check. So the 2 rooks and the bishop are guarded by check defense against the enemy rooks. In other words, it is mathematically impossible for Black to take any of these 3 pieces without delivering check. Therefore, White will have at least 2 of them left on the 9. And once you realize this concept of check defense, you don't have to calculate because you know this rule about. You have to calculate if he can take it with some other piece. For example, if a pawn can come through and under promoted, things like that. But you don't really have to calculate what the major pieces can do. You simply know that you've set up an impregnable position, and that's the power of check defense. Okay, for the last example, I'm going to show how check defense sort of carries on into the end game, and show a really well played game between myself and FIDE Master Kostas Printos in 1999. This was a correspondence game that we played, and the game ends in a draw, and I think it's very, very well played, and shows how both sides, use their defensive resources to the maximum. D5, D takes E4. I think this E4 theory is very difficult. I'll talk about it later, so I can't pretend to know for sure. I believe this is the optimal series, and it ends in a draw. Queen takes D8 check. King takes D8, C6, E5, H5. Very unusual position, but Black is guarding against. This looks very weird if you don't know anything about progressive chess, but Black is guarding against various swarming attempts, mostly involving bishop B5 and rook D1 check and things like that. And the C6 configuration is very powerful with once this bishop moves and you put a king on D7. It's a very secure position where the knight on B8 generally lasts all the way to the end of the game, and you'll have it on Black will generally have that piece on his 10. And so here, I don't know if this was the best 5, but because White has so many different ways to take the rooks, so this needs a lot further analysis. But this is what I chose to play. I took the pawn on E5, which maybe wasn't the best either because it opens the long diagonal. But I don't know. And then I played King D2, and I think this is an example of where White does want to get the king off the back rank because it creates stronger threats with his rooks and gets his king safe. Bishop G7, bishop takes H8, bishop takes B2, bishop takes A1, and knight f6, knight takes e4 check. And even though you look at this position and you say, well, white has equal piece count, it's actually kind of an annoying position to try to win, because the pawns are so reduced. The pawns were traded as early as the 3, and so instead of having 6 or 7 pawns, white only has 5 to work with. And I think this key enables black to hold the position, but I'm not 100% sure. So I played king e2, g4, g takes h5, creating a very strong threat on the outside. Bishop h3, bishop takes c8, bishop takes b7, bishop takes a8. So this is an example of, it's not quite the dangling pawn disruption, but it is a pawn that is far advanced. It's only 3 squares from promoting it and has to be addressed. So I wasn't sure if I was winning, but I thought I had pretty good winning chances here. And then when black sent back his 8, I realized that I had no winning chances, and then the game was hopelessly drawn. And black uses what I call check defense to the maximum. So first he gets rid of the enemy rook. Then he plays knight f2, knight g4, knight h6, an example of blocking. And then he plays bishop e5, bishop takes h2, bishop takes g1. Black's pieces are, this is a great game to illustrate everything we've talked about defensively. He's used blocking to put the knight on h6. He's used scattering. All his pieces are on dark squares, so it's scattering in the sense that the white bishop can't do anything. And it's very hard for either the king or the knight to take all these pieces, because they're just all the way across the board. And it's also check defense, because he would like to go through this pawn on c6 with a knight, play something like, knight c6, b8, but it's not easy for him to do that. A natural series like knight c3, knight b5, knight a7, knight c6, knight b8 is not possible, because knight c6 delivers check. And so this is an example of check defense. As I pointed out, if white could legally play knight c3, knight b5, knight a7, knight c6, knight b8, knight d7, knight e5, knight f7, knight h6, he would be completely winning. But he can't even play knight takes f7 either. That one's also guarded by check defense. So black's king is actually just superbly placed on d8. So the only thing I could find to even try to win the game and create problems for my opponent was knight d2, knight f3, knight takes g1, bishop takes c6, bishop e8, bishop takes f7, bishop g6, king f3, king f4. And now it's white's turn to use check defense. Even though black has 2 knights here, the problem is that he can't take the bishop on g6 or the pawn on h5 without delivering check. So therefore white will, by guarantee, he will have one of those pieces on his 11. And so black chose to play the series knight c6, knight b4, knight takes a2, knight b4. It was also worth pointing out that the black king, although it could try to come in on the king side, it would simply take way too many moves. The bishop on g6 guarded c2, and going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 with the king. I mean, what's he going to do for the other 4 moves? And he really needs to get this knight off, otherwise white will be able to take some more stuff. Knight takes c2. He has 5 moves left. Knight d4, knight f3, knight takes g1. And now he didn't even care that I could take his knight on g1 and just played the moves king e7, king f6. And king e7, king f6 was a brilliant move, because he's basically covered all the ways in. White has 11 moves, but what can he do here? I mean, he has to take the g1 knight, he has to take the h6 knight, he has to take the a7 pawn, and it's pretty clear he can't do that in 11 moves. Like, he can play king e4, king d5, king d6, king d7, king e8, king f6. Oh, well, he can't even get in. He can't even play king g8 because of the knight on h6 covered. So the knight on h6 is actually impregnable and guarded by blocking, the king on f6 and the knight on h6 are blocking the squares indirectly. So, yeah, it doesn't look like white has anything better here. So in fact, with 11 moves, white it really doesn't have anything except to take the A7 pawn and the G1 knight, and it's an obvious draw then, because black obviously can't checkmate with just one knight. Although, as we will find out in the endgame section, black can checkmate with either bishop and knight against king or two knights against the white king, but white cannot, and white cannot checkmate black with a similar material configuration. This is one of the most fascinating things about progressive chess, and I'll cover that in the next video when I talk about in-games. So this has run really long. I hope you guys have enjoyed looking at the various defensive techniques. I think they can be very, very beautiful and very fun. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.